Hi, I am ColdBrewBarbie. I have a YouTube channel and I talk all things crystals. I talk about how to spot fake crystals, how to start a crystal business, and I do tons of fun crystal hauls here on the channel. And I am here with Hibiscus Moon. And Hibiscus Moon is a former science department head turned crystal healer and is a self-proclaimed geo geek extraordinaire. She is the founder of Hibiscus Moon Crystal Academy, which I've had several Patreon members take your course and absolutely love it. And the author of the book, Crystal Grids, How and Why They Work. And you can download her free Create Your Own Sacred Space with Crystal E-Kit at hibiscusmoongift.com. And today we are going to be talking about a hot topic, which is ethical crystal sourcing. And I'm so excited to talk about this with Hibiscus Moon because she has tons of experience and has talked about this on her channel several times. So let's jump in and get started. So my very first question is, what is the biggest misconception about ethical crystal sourcing?
I'm so happy we're talking about this, Barbie. Thank you for asking the good questions. Okay, so firstly, I think everybody knows, well, no, obviously everybody does not know, but ethical sourcing is really important to us. We were just having a whole conversation about it. And there's a few different meanings to that term also. You know, it conjures up different things in people's minds. So I'll get on that in just a second, but it could mean different things to different people. They'll think about different aspects of it. The biggest misconception, I think, right now is that people assume that our love for crystals is raping Mother Earth or causing a lot of ecological damage. It's also the cause of a lot of human suffering, and that we just overlook all of this because we love the sparkly crystals so much that we just overlook it and ignore it. And I read in an article recently, this crossed my desk, and so I copied it down so I could read it out. It was a popular article, like it went viral. And they said, what is it that crystal consumers, the kind of people who wouldn't eat a battery farmed egg, let alone meat, that they couldn't trace or yet to question the provenance of their crystals? And I'm like, no, because I keep trying to bring this topic up. I know you do.
Yeah.
A lot of people in our community are kind of afraid. They'll ask on Instagram and say, what about unethically sourced crystals? You know, what can you tell me about that? And I've tried to address, I can only speak from my point of view. I've tried to address this topic many, many times, but the conversation just doesn't get any traction. It just goes away. And, you know, as much as I want to talk about it, like if I talk about crystal fakes or if you talk about crystal fakes, that goes like wildfire.
Blows up.
Everybody's like, blows up. But if we try to talk about this, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's nice. Sorry, I asked. So I've been trying to bring attention to this matter, and I looked it up since 2012 was the first time that I started yapping about it. I've never ignored this matter. I've tried to shine a light on it more than any other crystal topic, I think multiple times, but it just doesn't catch fire. And it's an inconvenient truth that no one wants to hear. So I still, as much as I've brought it up, I still get people who will like park things in my comments that say, so we're just going to ignore the ways ethically sourced crystals then, right? And I'm like, what? I've not been ignoring it. I keep talking about it.
Yeah, you talk about it all the time.
Yeah. So I said that there's different things, different categories, I guess, or buckets we can put it into when we're discussing ethics of crystal collecting. So, and then there's different responses and solutions for each, depending on what you're talking about. So we can talk about fake crystal selling. That can also be part of the ethics conversation too. If it's 100% ethical. I've seen some sites put on things like they'll create their own badge and it says reliable authenticity or 100% ethically mined. And they're claiming that all their crystals have been extracted from the earth by ethical mining professionals under fair trade conditions, tested for fakery. And then I have been witness to people with these kinds of claims having fake crystals in their stash. And I'm not saying that they did it on purpose,
right?
But if you're really doing all that requires for stating those statements, you didn't do it, obviously, you know?
Right.
So yeah. All right. Then another aspect of it is blood minerals. So that might conjure up the whole thing about, there was a movie, Leonardo DiCaprio movie, I think it was called Blood Diamonds.
Yes. Blood Diamonds.
Yeah. Yeah. And that'll open the eyes to a lot, open up the eyes of a lot of people, that that's what goes on. It does go on. We don't deny it. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. And it does play into other minerals too, other than just diamonds. But you can consciously source your diamonds, like where your diamonds are coming from, if you want to pay attention to it. Some people would rather not and just buy their diamonds from the jeweler. But okay, so this is going to be really hard to keep me on track, Barbie.
That's totally fine. I love it. I'm here for it. And what's interesting is I've even had people say that lab created or fake things are more ethical and more sustainable, which is such an interesting conversation and a different side of everything. So I think there's like that aspect to people not wanting to do any kind of damage to the earth or any kind of damage to the community and just solely have lab grown crystals, especially in the TikTok community. So that's something that came out of one of my viral videos about fake crystals, was people were really interested in the true lab grown crystals, which is
and so you can kind of see why. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, I have a whole thing about like the Sicilian methods of mining that were not so great not too long ago, and that now lab grown minerals has replaced the need for that. So there is
a whole element to that.
And then of course the big one is another aspect of the ethical mining is the caring for the environment. That's another very important aspect. So the goal is to avoid all these issues, right, of an unethical mining, but we want to benefit from sustainable development, for authenticity, for the planet, the treatment of people, all of it, right? Of course, that's a goal, and also I have a goal that other people may or may not care about, but I think energetically, it's important to make sure that the minerals are, as much as you can, you cannot 100% guarantee, but as much as you can, that the minerals are surrounded by the clean energy of ethical practices.
Yeah.
And surrounded by energy of unethical stuff. Right. So usually mineral specimens are collected as a byproduct of ore mining. Okay. Right. So either they're hand mined. So like, Dan Hurd, he's a great YouTuber that I like to watch. He hand mines all his crystals and you watch him do it, hand mining. It's very sustainable and it's really cool. But a lot of minerals are an unexpected byproduct of ore mining. And ore mining is where mines have been dug up to get at things we need on a huge societal level, technological level, like aluminum, gold, copper, coal. And while they're in there strip mining for that stuff, usually, you know what most of the strip mining is for nowadays?
What?
Our devices that we are all on right now.
That makes sense. The computers, the laptops, the
computers, the smartphones. That's what most of the strip mining is for. So when people get all up in arms on their phone and they're like typing away, you're holding the very culprit in your hand of where that strip mining comes from. I'm not saying that it's okay, but the crystals then are a byproduct of that. So if you go into a copper mine, you're going to find lots of different minerals that no one would go digging for these because it just, the money doesn't make sense. But the money makes sense to go in there for the copper. And then they find these other minerals there like turquoise and azurite, malachite, so on and so forth. So the gold is used in our devices. They're known as these different types of minerals that we use in our devices, rare earth minerals, which is kind of a misnomer because they're not that rare, but also known as conflict minerals, which I think is a better name because they do cause a lot of conflict in different societies, different countries. So as soon as I bring that up, the conversation shuts down. Everyone's like, oh, okay. And then because you feel guilty because you're holding the very device in your hand that's causing the issue, it's an inconvenient truth they'd rather ignore or avoid it. Not everybody, but I notice the conversation gets shut down. And I'm not saying these things to shut down the conversation. I'm saying these things to shine light on it because then we can be, I feel like, more smart. Is that right grammar? I don't know. We can be smarter about the devices we choose because you ask about conflict minerals. You ask, like Apple didn't used to really put out any information on it. Now they do because enough people have started asking, where do you get the conflict minerals from that you put into these devices? Are you raping the earth? Are you raping the country? Are you, doing poorly by the people working to get these minerals, or are you caring about it? They didn't used to, but when people started asking questions, yeah, they do, but not everybody does because not enough of us are asking questions about it.
Right.
So
exactly.
I'm not saying that it's okay to specimen mine as byproduct because it's just a byproduct and continue strip mining. I mean, like I said before, there would be no strip mining just for mineral specimens. sense because it's economically not viable. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
In my original blog post when I originally talked about this in 2012, I went over how pure specimen mining is a much gentler process. We can get into a cultural gray area too when we talk about how they're mined, the hand mining, how old is the person mining, mining by small groups and families. Child labor was definitely employed in the past, definitely still employed in some places, but I'm not going to talk. It's weird for me to get into child labor because this is a cultural thing. And how much labor are we having the children do is another thing. In our culture, Western culture, we're like, oh no, child labor, no, not good, right? But if you're having children do things like, I'm Sicilian, so I have a different outlook on it. I've been working since I'm 10 years old, never quit, never stopped, never, ever, ever. And I like it. My father as well. He's been working since he's 9 and loves it. He even says he thinks it's a healthy thing. Now, some of you out there might be going, what in the world? You are a tyrant,
Right. I know, but it can be a cultural thing. That is so true.
It can be, but then there's, we can talk about, there was some horrible child labor that I can speak to personally from Sicily. I can't talk about it in other countries like in India because I know of it, but I've not been there.
Right.
I can't speak to it because culturally, but here's the thing, if somebody's a messenger running around doing, messengering or taking specimens that aren't so heavy that they're breaking the kid's back from one point to another, I personally don't see anything wrong with that. But oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get myself into so much hot water here. But this is what I'm saying is there's so much gray area. It's not black and white, depending on the cultural lens you're using to look at it. The other issue is we have proof that the Taliban and other armed groups are earning up to $20 million a year. If we're going to talk about lapis lazuli from Afghanistan's lapis mines.
Yeah.
So personally, I've chosen not to purchase any new lapis. And I think that I first came out with that article back in 2016 or 2015. It's straight up. I've researched this. You can find lower grade lapis in other countries, but it's impossible to source the high grade stuff now with at least part of what you're paying going directly to the Taliban. Anybody who wants to say anything about that, against that, can I curse?
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Because I've seen that too. People trying to make the argument, well, you don't have to get it from, the Taliban. And then I'm like, but the high quality, the nice grade stuff does come from there. I don't sell it anymore because of that. And when I first sold it, I wasn't even buying direct. I was buying it out of a different country in China because they sell a lot of it there from, exporting it or importing it. And it's just really interesting how a lot of people try to be defensive about that particular mineral and say, oh no, but it's proven to be coming from these other countries. And I'm like, but the kind you have is not from those other countries. And you can tell. Yeah,
you can tell. You can tell very easily with lapis where it's from and the high grade stuff. I mean, even Jay King, some people might be familiar with who he is. He sells a lot on QVC and stuff. He even says, I can't get the high grade lapis anymore because where it comes from, I am not okay with going to buy from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think that's what makes even mineral tracing so hard is because it comes from a certain country and then goes to another country to be carved and then goes to a wholesaler in that country and then goes to a crystal shop or a crystal supplier in the United States and then goes to my shop. It's like it's really hard to track every single one of those pieces. And not everyone is legally required to in every single country because minerals come from all over the world. And I think people have a misconception that it's easy to trace where things come from, but it's such a blurry industry. Like China has really great carvings and a lot of the amazing carvings we see come out of China. But just because the carvings come out of China doesn't mean the minerals come out of China. So I think that that's a really big thing that, even if you got it ethically and sustainably sourced from Brazil, if it went to China, may or may not be, but no one knows, or if it was mined unethically but carved ethically, then the lines are blurred and it's really hard unless you're the one mining, carving and selling and distributing it. It's super hard to officially know. So I think sometimes that gets hard to say, yes, yes, we're ethical 100% because it touches so many hands, as you know, too. It's kind of wild.
Yes. Yeah. So true.
Next question. Is there a way to truly verify that a crystal is ethically sourced outside of mining it yourself?
No. Next question. No.
I know. That's what I was like. If I had to answer this, I would say no, because it does touch so many hands.
Yeah, it's impossible. You do need to do your own due diligence as a buyer and as a seller, I think, on both ends.
Yeah.
Again, we can't always trust what we're told.
Right.
If you're a seller, you go to a gem show, you're buying some crystals wholesale from a wholesaler, and they tell you a certain story. They very well could be just telling you what you want to hear. And then you're going to pass that info to your customers and then feel like you did good. That's not enough. That's not enough. There's no way to 100% prove that anything is ethically sourced. Again, there's no governing body for the entire planet, just impossible to do at this time anyway. There's no way to know besides doing your due diligence, being responsible, which I'll get to in a second. But no matter what, I feel it's a supplier's and wholesaler's responsibility to make sure that the stones are sourced as ethically as possible.
Right.
But you can't 100% guarantee it.
Right.
And then the responsibility also lies, I feel, in the final buyer.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
So ask questions.
Yeah.
And if the person you're purchasing from doesn't want to answer the questions, find someone else.
Yeah. That's a big red flag.
They shouldn't have a problem. And they shouldn't have a problem. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I will find out.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Even you can say, I don't want to claim that all of these are ethical, because people have come to me and say, are your crystals ethically sourced? And I say, I can't verify that. Just to be honest with you, no crystal shop can verify that. So if someone is saying, yes, my crystals are 100% ethically sourced, I'm like, that's a little bit of a red flag as well. And you can clearly, like when I go to their shop, I can see that they have crystals from all over the world. And I'm like, I don't think this person is flying to every single mine, carver, supplier, and verifying that that's happening, or the would cost $1 million. Not plausible.
You know what's involved in doing that. So you, Barbie, from your end are going, it's not passing the smell test. Right. So yeah. So I have a little story about asking the questions. And I feel like some sellers are afraid to say, I don't know, I will find out, because they feel like they're going to be seen as not being knowledgeable. Listen, it's way worse to tell some lie to try to cover your tail or make yourself look knowledgeable and then be caught in the bad information that you spewed out. There's too many people online recording everything you're doing and saying. They send it to me. My grads, my Hibiscus Moon Crystal Academy grads, are notorious for catching people doing this stuff. Yeah. They're intimidating because they will catch you in your ignorance and they will catch you in their scam. We much more appreciate a true, authentic, I don't know, but I will find out. I will buy from that person before I'm going to buy from someone that obviously told me some scam or ignorant comment just to make it seem like they're knowledgeable.
Right.
That drives me nuts, and my students will catch you. They are notorious. They know how to test. They know all the little things, and they'll ask specific questions. They'll get the answer. They'll get the mineral. They'll test it, catch you in the lie, and then put you on blast. So I don't recommend.
I know with like TikTok and all the social media, it's like you really don't want to be dishonest, especially about something that is such a hot topic right now. And I think there's totally such a thing as like consciously sourced, where the seller is doing as much research as they can. They're going and potentially meeting with miners. So I think there's such a thing as consciously sourced, where crystal shop owners are going out and doing the work and asking the hard questions, or going to the gem shows, making those connections, talking to the carvers, asking all the right questions. It still may not be 100% truthful on their part, but I think it's nice to meet somebody face to face and actually get to know them and connect with them and work with them over time. And I think that is so important as a crystal shop owner, as a buyer, as anyone who's in the crystal industry, to go to local gem shows. They're free. They happen several times a year. You can go to the Tucson ones, the Denver ones. They're literally happening all the time. And it's just such a good experience to like get in there and ask those questions and learn about what what it takes to carve, what it takes to mine, what it takes to wholesale, what it takes to be a shop owner. Even if you're just a collector, I think it's so important to learn those things and understand what all goes into it. And the thing is, ethical is such a tricky word. It's not black and white. And what ethical means in America is totally different than Brazil or China or Africa, because we all have different working standards. So I think it's hard for us as Americans to say that's not ethically sourced when it could be in their country, and that's not for us to dictate necessarily.
True. And what you think, one thing you said that I think is really important, and that people, as a seller, as a crystal seller, I think that people overlook doing this. So the importance of doing this is when you're first building your wholesale relationships, going to gem shows, meeting people in person. I think there's nothing comparable to that. You're meeting the actual miners or the wholesalers for the first time. I would say sometimes now, and I've seen this happening more and more, they didn't used to do this, but they bring photo albums of how they mine and where they mine, or video, and they'll show you on their phone of where, they do things. If you don't see that up front, not to say that they're not doing it, but I would nicely as possible request to see photos and videos and be interested more in learning about how they work and keep that relationship going even when you're not at the gem show. Like I've made lots of friends with miners all over the planet that I talk to. I'm not even a seller, just because I'm interested in finding out, when they find a really cool new pocket or something, they're excited. They'll send me photos and video and stuff, and tell them your customers are also interested. That gets them excited about it. If they're truly ethically doing what they feel, if they're trying to be, I like the term you used, conscious. What did you call it? Consciously sourced. Consciously sourced. If they're doing that and you're doing it, everybody gets really excited about talking about it. You get excited about telling your customers about it. And you as a customer should be excited about asking the questions and hearing about it. So, because if you're interested, your customers are also going to be really passionate and interested in it, right? Exactly. How can they not be? And I have a whole class elective on this, not because I came up with the idea. It was by popular demand from my community that teaches crystal sellers how to navigate setting up these relationships step by step.
Yeah, I 100% am all for going to gem shows. That was like one of the very first things I did when I got into this. And I just went by myself and I was like, I'm going to spend the whole day here just talking to people, asking questions. And I was like, I got to get out to Tucson. It was one of the best experiences. I met so many amazing people from all over the world, which is just such a cool, it's like a very spiritual thing, but also just such an educational thing. And you make amazing connections that you can have like for the rest of your life. And they can also supply crystals. And I remember talking to this Mexican obsidian vendor, and he was showing us how when you purchase from us, you're helping an entire community in Mexico. And I was like, to me, I don't know how you get more consciously sourced than that. I mean, like he showed examples of what you do when you purchase from him and how it helps his entire community. And I was like, that is just like so beautiful. And I'm like all for that. I'm all for supporting that. And, I think my customers would love that. And, we're helping him, he's helping us. It's like a full circle thing. And I think there's a lot more of that in this industry than people know. But I think a lot of people jump to the conclusion that people are doing awful things that are, child labor, destroying the earth. And I don't think it's always that. I think there's just a lot of negative connotations around mineral sourcing. But to your point, I think it's very important to know that a lot of that comes from like the laptops and the computers and even the makeup industry. I saw a documentary about like mica and mica mining and child labor. And I was like, that's like a whole nother thing. So if you wear makeup and you're asking these questions about crystals, but not asking it of these makeup sellers, are you going after the right things, the right industry? Like we should really be focusing our energy towards those that are proven to actually have really terrible ethics around them.
That's so true. You bring up really good points. And it's not like we keep saying, it's not black and white. It just isn't,
Totally. It isn't.
Yeah. I think it's because people have gotten used to having these nice, neat categories. They can just trust the categorization of something being ethically sourced or fair trade. And that's nice when we can have that, but we don't have it for minerals, unfortunately. And there isn't a way on the horizon that we see as of right now. Not to say it couldn't happen in the future, but right now we don't have it. And people are calling for it, but it's not that simple.
No, it's such a massive industry and an industry that touches so many different countries to make one little product. Sometimes it's kind of wild. And there is like it can be mined, carved, and sold in the same country. Like that does happen. And that I think is a little less risky, but not foolproof. It doesn't always that cut and dry for those countries either.
Yeah, so true.
All right, let's go on to our next question. Okay, this one's kind of similar to what we've been talking about, but what is your advice for crystal shop owners to avoid purchasing unethical crystals?
Okay, so I would say first, if it's too good a deal, when you're selling crystals, you start to learn pricing. It's one of the first things you start learning about.
Yep.
If it's too good a deal, it most likely means someone paid for that along the way. Don't just overlook it and go, but this is a good deal. I'm just going to not ask any questions. Wrong. That's the wrong path to go. I think your customers are going to appreciate you. Maybe the price would be higher, but you explaining why the price is higher and not so low, because if it's low, somebody paid for that along the way. If there isn't a really, really good reason for it to be that great deal, start asking questions. Somebody's paying for that on the path here. So you got to be mindful of that. Also, understanding and being aware of what's going on in the world is vital. So you're aware of the lapis type situations.
Right. Or Larimar, the Larimar mine, even with all of that going on, like a lot of people didn't know what happened with that a couple months ago, and people continue to sell Larimar. And I think that's one where it's like, there's questions around the ethics out of that mine too, but it's not so black and white, I think, for some of that as well.
Yeah. And it's something like, again, unless you're there boots on the ground, it's very hard to say, exactly what's happening, but there's nothing wrong with questioning it. Right. And then trying to make informed decisions on whether you choose to carry it or find an alternative or not carry it and why. Doesn't mean you can't change your mind later, and doesn't mean you can't be wrong. And there's anything going to be wrong with, that person said incorrect information. Don't be afraid of that. Like I said before, don't be afraid of that. I think it's worse to pretend you know something that you don't know and say that you do and be caught in that whole thing than to just say, I don't know, but I will find out,
Yeah.
I've written deep dive blog posts, Barbie, with my first putting people on notice about the blood mineral thing with lapis back in 2016 but I suggest, here's what I suggest. You asked me what specifically, so let me get my squirrel brain back on track here. What owners can do to avoid purchasing unethical crystals is get educated about the conflict minerals, that whole aspect, get educated on crystal fakes. Yeah. And so this way you can test some of the things, even when the seller tells you, and maybe in the past they've had a great reputation, test what you got, because even the most best reputation wholesalers have gotten glass in their collection by accident. And then it goes to the sellers, and then it goes to the end user. They test it, and then they blame it on you for carrying the glass. Just every once in a while, test. So get educated.
I've seen it 1,000 times. Oh my God, I've seen it 1,000 times. I've had people come to me be so heartbroken that they bought fake citrine or lab grown green ghost quartz or lab grown amethyst, or glass. And it's just, that's why I try to make these videos as it comes up. But there's so much of like new material being discovered that it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I have to buy it. I have to check it out. I have to send it out. I have to look at it, do the research on where it comes from. It's not an easy thing to find these fakes or misidentified crystals, because I don't know everything and I'm not a geologist, but I think there's certain things, red flags that you can look for as a customer, a crystal shop owner, a wholesaler, that indicate whether something is glass or lab grown or treated or whatever the case may be. And that's with ethical crystal sourcing too. I think there's known things that people can avoid easily, or research it before you blindly purchase or trust some random stranger across the world, let alone even in the United States. It's like they're still strangers.
And something else that people can do, if it sounds like fun to you, sounds like a blast to me, is to do your own mining.
Yeah.
In almost anywhere you live, and I live in Florida, and we used to think there were no crystals here. There are even crystals here that I have mined myself. And that's really fun. People really would appreciate knowing that you are the one who birthed that mineral from the earth. You can show behind the scenes, TikTok stories, whatever, reels about you doing that. They're going to love that. Oh, yeah. They know exactly who sourced it and how it was sourced, and nobody got mistreated except yourself. You mistreat
Right.
yourself as much as you want while you're out there.
Exactly.
And miners really well. And again, does it pass your smell test? So that's what my recommendations.
I love that. I think that is amazing. And then I think we have one last question here. Let's see here. What is your advice for crystal lovers / collectors regarding ethical crystal sourcing and how to become more aware?
Okay. So I think we've said it a few times, get informed, but they might be like, well, where, how,
Yeah.
I would just Google the topic of ethical crystal mining, but you got to be careful because there are some articles that went viral a couple times doing the very thing we were talking about at the beginning, hitting the crystal collectors over the head saying you care about where your meat comes from, but you don't care about where your crystals come from. And they're totally ignoring the information that like got me shadow banned, where I tried to bring shine light. So not to toot my own horn, but if you Google me, Hibiscus Moon, and I would highly advise reading my blog posts on these topics in their entirety on the ethics of crystal mining. I'm not the only person who's talked about this, but try to find somebody specific who has talked about it. Because if you just Google it in that manner, just generally ethics of crystal collecting, you're going to get a lot of that stuff where they don't really shine a light on what the actual issues are.
So
get informed about that.
People who want clicks and web hits. I think like a really good piece of advice is trust those who are in the industry themselves. If someone's writing an article from Vice News or something, they probably are on the more extremist end of showing because they want web hits and clicks and they're not in the industry themselves. So, reading and watching, you have a lot of videos around ethical crystal sourcing. We're having this conversation to provide information around ethical crystal sourcing. There's people in the industry who are not shy to talk about this, who have been trying to talk about it. And you just have to do the research and find them. And I know the research part can be daunting, but I think it's so important to find those people. And yeah, if it sounds alarmist, it probably is for web clicks. There's a very I think casual way to talk about this without shaming people. I think when you get into the shaming these people or this group of people because of this, I think that can be more of a web hit thing versus an educational thing.
Or do they give solutions in that same article? Because there are solutions. So let's not just ignore the solutions. They've definitely been put out there, alternatives and solutions. If they're just ignoring that, then I can say, yeah, that's a fear-mongering article. Because a good reporter would take it from all sides, right? And there are solutions. So don't sit there and act like there's no solution to this and you guys are all evil.
Right, right, exactly.
Another thing you can do is, like I said before, and I'm going to harp on this a little bit because I feel like it's the one thing we don't want to do is email or verbally ask questions from your tech companies and tell them what you think about conflict minerals. Ask the questions when you're purchasing electronics so they know that you do care about conflict minerals, and then vote with your dollars. Choose to purchase your next smartphone or electronic device from a company that pledges to not use conflict minerals. That's how we take care of that right there. There's the solution right there for that. Enough of us doing that takes care of that. And then just asking questions, ask informed questions in general. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And as the sellers, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I will find out.
Yeah. And follow through with it too. Don't just be like, I'll find out and then forget about it. I think it's being a crystal seller is definitely a full-time, constantly researching, constantly asking questions of your suppliers, constantly learning.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm never going to know it all.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many minerals. That's the fun of it. I think that it's a continual learning process.
Oh, yeah.
Also, something else is, I think it's as a buyer or collector, find 2, 3, 4 sellers that you feel comfortable asking questions with and that you can create relationships with, and that aren't just putting on a good show, but they walk their talk and they have values and vibrational matching with your own. You just feel you have an inner knowing that this person's vibing with you. Now you still sellers that you can trust. You can build a relationship with them. And I think that's really important. So the mom and pop smaller crystal sellers are going to be much easier to do that with than just buying the cheapest crystal you can find on Amazon, because who is that? Who is that? Can you talk to them? I don't know who that is.
Yeah. So
and
many,
they
like,
get away with a lot on there.
Yeah, and so many
I'd
big
rather-
shops get away with selling crystals now, like Wish and Shein and Romwe and
I watch your videos on
Five
that.
Below, and they're selling fake stuff all the time. So I think just because it's $1 doesn't mean it's a good purchase, nor probably not ethical if you think about it, So
I know you're a pyromaniac like me, Barbie.
Yeah.
You've lit crystals on fire, or crystals, I'll say, on fire. I've done that in the past too. And you find the plastic shit that way, and that Five Below is selling this stuff, and it says that it's an authentic crystal on the card.
Yeah,
they can get away with it. I'd rather pay my crystals to someone that I know matches my value system, and I know is passionate and cares about the crystals. Because imagine the energy they're enveloped in, and cares about how they were obtained, and is as knowledgeable as possible, because none of us are going to know it all.
Right.
But they deeply care about what they do. I'd rather pay for more for that, to know that I'm getting that. And I go with my gut too. Not to say that that's 100% foolproof system, but it's the best you can do. And I think it's a really good way to go. Be educated, work on your continuing education. It's never done. That's the fun of it. I see it as not like, oh, never going to be done with this. Well, then you know what? You're not passionate about this. Find something else that you are passionate about.
100% agree. And I think those who dedicate their time to educating and teaching are your best resources. And I think those who put that work in are great resources. And, it's like if someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to go find out, because I think the more you spend time in this industry, the stronger your gut check gets, the more you know to get the information from or who to go to. And there are free resources out there to avoid getting yourself into a situation where you have to lie, or you're selling unethical crystals or fakes, or, it's like I started 3 years ago, and I've been able to avoid it. And if I can avoid it, other people can avoid it. You've been able to avoid it. I think there's proof in working on it and having a passion for it.
That's it. That's the passion. I think the passion brings that out. I would get excited when people would ask me a question that I didn't know, because it gave me something to go learn about. And I'd be like, I'll get back to you on that. And then it would also be another tool I could put in my pocket that I now know about for someone else. Because if one person asked that question, other people must have that question too.
Oh yeah. It's like when people ask me if I can identify a crystal for them, like usually I can tell if it's fake or if it's glass or if it's something, but there's occasions where someone will send me a photo. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. And I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm going to do some spy work and find out where this came from. And, I'll ask them, do you know the country? Do you know where did you buy it? What did you pay for it? Because that can factor into figuring out this mystery mineral. And, sometimes we don't know what it is or where it came from. And it could have been a gift from grandma or something from an estate sale. It doesn't mean that it's unethically sourced. But, I think that's where it gets hard with that. There's some collectors who sell their collections, and it's like, we don't know. Or it's not like these crystals expire. There could be lapis from 25 years ago that someone's reselling, and we can't say, oh, that's unethically sourced because it's lapis. But, we don't know the history. These crystals are millions of years old. It's just impossible.
Yeah, I'd say for yourself, like I was just in a antique shop this weekend, and I saw this huge lapis pendant. I'm not kidding you, this big.
Oh, wow.
And it was in there. It was signed by the designer, so we knew what year. It was definitely an antique. And it was only $225, and it was a big, huge chunk of lapis lazuli, high quality. I didn't get it, but you know what? If I wanted it, I wouldn't have felt badly about getting that, because I know 100% that did not go to Taliban, and that money's not going to go to the Taliban. But you don't, unless I'm just saying, for a personal collection, if somebody wanted to do that, that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm not what to do either. That's what I choose to do about lapis. Everybody has to make up their own mind, because like we said, this is a gray area.
It really, really is. And
I don't know anybody who would want to give money to the Taliban, but anyway.
No, I don't either. I know, that's what I'm like, when I tell people that, they're like almost super taken aback. And I'm like, but that's kind of what it is if you're purchasing from that direct from that country. And they're like, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like really bad. It's think about it. So like that's like the being educated about these minerals, where they're coming from, who's owning the mines or who's taken over the mines and controlling the mines. I think it's different if a miner owns a mine and he's mining his own material versus the Taliban owning a mine and selling it to fund things that are completely unethical. So there's just such a broad spectrum of the crystal world. There's people who own their own mines and dig their own crystals, like the Herkimer diamond mine. Like that is a totally different scope of practice than other mines. And I think that's where it's really hard to really know the ethicality of every single stone in the entire world.
Yes, but I'm so glad that we talked about this today, because I think it's kind of giving people permission to understand and know that it's not black and white. You're not going to have an answer, and it's okay I think we need to make it okay that you say, I love the term you came up with, consciously sourced. You did put the effort in finding out what's up with it, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think learning as much as you can before you start purchasing, whether you're a customer or a seller or a aspiring seller, I think education is your best defense against buying something that is unethical or fake or anything negative in the industry. I think, and there's resources out there. I think you have great resources on your channel. I have great resources on my channel, and we're both always open to getting questions, and we have a lot of passion for it. And just ask.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having this very robust conversation with me around ethical crystal sourcing. I'm sure both of our audiences will appreciate it. And if you guys have questions, let us know in the comment section down below. We will try to answer them to the best of our knowledge. Our answer may be, we don't know. Let's find out. And we might make a follow-up video. So always stay curious about it. And thank you guys all so much for watching. And thank you, Hibiscus Moon, for joining me. And
thank you so much, Barbie. This was fun. Anytime you want to dive down these rabbit holes, I'm there with you, girl.
Awesome. That would be amazing. I'm sure people would continue to love watching it.
So fun. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you.